Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about the election process. Okay, we've talked about it a lot in class lately in terms of what's going on in the news. You pretty much can't, turn around and hear about the election here in the United States. So, how does this whole process work for both the candidate and for you? We're going to try and focus on that today, all right? So, first off, to become a candidate, every single state is differently how you declare your candidacy. Obviously, you guys say you want to run, but typically you have to get signatures on signatures to get on the ballot. You have to get a petition signed, if you will, to get on the ballot in every single state. So every single presidential candidate who's out there had to have people in every single state collecting signatures for them to be on the ballot. So here in Wisconsin, no matter if you were Trump or Bush or Kasich or whoever, Bernie Sanders, Ted Cruz, whoever it is, okay, they had to get a certain number of signatures to be on the ballot. Also, sometimes you have to pay a certain amount of fee, a certain fee too, to be on the ballot as well sometimes. So here in Wisconsin, to be the Wisconsin governor, all you need is 2,000 signatures on a petition, and you're good to go. Same thing for becoming a senator from Wisconsin. The House of Representatives, okay, in Washington, you only need 1,000, and then the list goes down from there. So that's mainly you do become a candidate. We'll do something similar here for our candidacy in class. Now, once you get on the campaign trail, it's a lot about appearances, speeches, debates. You start seeing all this stuff happening. You have to get out there, share the platform, share what you believe, and talk to your your potential constituents. And we'll talk about that in a little bit in class in terms of some examples of how that happens and what they can do on the campaign trail, how candidates try to get your vote and support. The debates are kind of the fun part. We've talked about the debates a lot in here so far in terms of how debates kind of work and what debates we've been doing. We have a lot of different kind of debates. We have forum debates where you kind of see down here the two guys kind of talk right across from each other. It was most of what we've seen so far in the presidential debate so far are these, where you get the questions from a moderator who's sitting down here, and they can attack each other or answer their questions based off how they feel about issues. I also have the town hall debates too. They're kind of fun. Town hall is where anyone can ask a question from the audience, or pre-planned people ask questions from the audience to kind of figure out how the candidates feel issues. There's also issue debates, where they just focus on issues, and they can throw an issue out. Every single candidate can argue about what they believe in. And so different kinds of debates that are out there. Now, the first step of election, what we're going through right now, is primaries, okay, or a caucus that we held every spring or every fall for the different positions. So, like earlier this year in Wisconsin, we had a primary for Supreme Court justice. Later on in April, we'll have our regular primary for the actual party. So, the primary election process is just to figure out who's going to run for the party, and it's voted by the party. The idea was started in the early 1900s to end corruption. Otherwise, the party leaders would just select who they want, and then that's who would be in charge. The party leader is not the candidate. So what you have to do is you have to get a certain, party chooses based off what candidate, they have to get a certain number of delegates. So every single state has a certain number of delegates to every party. And the goal is to get a certain number of delegates to get the nomination. So the Republicans, it's like 1,283. For the Democrats, it's 2,300 some odd you have to get. Now, every single state has a certain number of delegates. And when you run in that primary against each other, okay, within that primary, you get a certain percentage of the delegates each time, and we talk about that in class a little bit. There are also these things called superdelegates. Superdelegates are the party bigwigs, really important party people who kind of will either endorse or give their support to a certain candidate, and that counts as that superdelegate. So they might be people in Congress, they might be former people in Congress, governors, former governors, rich donors, those kind of things are those superdelegates. Now, the November election is called the general election, always in November, and that's where elections you're going to decide who's going to be president or representative or senator, whoever it might be. And so you can kind of see in terms of how that election works. And we'll get into electoral college, all that kind of stuff later on. But obviously you have your results, whether it be local results for like a House of Representatives, there'd be a statewide election for senator or governor, or there'd be a nationwide election like this you have for President of the United States. Kind of a cool map here. This shows the 2012 election by county, by how each county voted, whether they voted Republican or Democrat. So you can kind of tell where this purple area right up here. It's kind of cool to think about, okay? So you can kind of see where that election in November then happens. So how do elections impact the candidates? What do the candidates do in the election? So first off, they're influenced, okay? Obviously, candidates are going to say what they think is right. They're always going to have their own ideas, which could be, you think about what candidates want to do right now, whether it be Bernie Sanders and healthcare and free college or be Donald Trump and building a wall and doing all that kind of stuff. Okay, their own ideas are there. Those have to do follow the ideas of other constituents. Constituents are the people they represent. And obviously, if they're going to get reelected or people are going to vote for them, they have to do what people want them to do as well. So, you have your own ideas, you have the ideas of people you represent. You have to make compromises too. Compromises will influence representatives and senators, even presidents a lot, saying, well, listen, I'll do this for you, you do this for me, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Those compromises come in too in terms of how things are going to work out. You have interest groups that get involved in people too. So these are companies, organizations that will try and influence votes in Congress or influence votes anywhere. So they use lobbyists who hang out in the lobby of the Capitol, as they used to back in the day. Now they just kind of go to the offices, but whatever. And what they do is they will, try to convince representatives and senators to change their mind or vote a certain way about stuff. Sometimes they'll donate money as well to those candidates for their reelection campaign. This system has been around forever, we're talking, okay? But interest groups, we'll talk about interest groups and super PACs a lot later on too. As I said, money can be a thing here. So money does equal speech. Some we'll talk about in greater detail later on this year. We'll talk about in greater detail, talk about super PACs and that kind of stuff. There are some limits on donations on what you can and cannot donate. But it's not a bribe, it's a donation to that candidate. The only thing is that money does equal speech. So if I donate money to a candidate, it means that I'm going to support them. It's like me saying I support them by donating money. So donating money to a candidate is okay as long as you are following the rules, because there are rules in place since 1975, how much you can donate to each candidate, but there are always ways around the rules. And so some of the ways around the rules are with political action committees. So every single group out there, okay, every single company or organization, well, most company organizations have this group. It's kind of the the political group for a company or organization, okay? Now, to become a PAC, you have to register with the Federal Election Commission, the federal organization that oversees all the elections. There are hundreds of these things out there. So my favorite example is the NRA, National Rifle Association, right? Is a association for gun owners. They have a PAC that will donate money to candidates who support their views, okay? They can donate up to $5,000 to an individual candidate. They can donate more to the parties, other groups where they want to as well, but there are limits on how much they can vote. There's this thing called soft money. Those are special groups that have certain tax codes. We'll get more in details in class because it's interesting to look at. Can donate lots of money to a political party or local group. It has no limit. A lot of times the money that's involved is used for TV and radio ads to campaign for a candidate. They can either be for the candidate directly or they can be about an issue. Currently, you'll notice, we'll look at this in class, about how a candidate has to say, I'm blank, 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 and I support this message. Well, that means that it's their commercial, okay? The soft money comes in, these other special charities come in when they do an ad about an issue. So sometimes they'll just do an ad about an issue. They'll talk about gun violence. Maybe gun violence. Maybe they'll say Bernie Sanders is terrible on gun violence, but Marco Rubio is amazing against gun violence, that kind of stuff, okay? It's focused on an issue versus a candidate. So it's kind of a roundabout way of doing things. Also, as a way of getting around the rules by using issue ads. And we'll talk about that too a little bit so you get a background. So maybe the commercial will be about a certain issue and not about the candidate, but it's about the candidate really kind of in the background. It's confusing, but we'll get to it, okay? Now, so about you, the voter, okay? Obviously, you're hearing all this stuff about the candidate, and some of you will run for office in our mock election here. What about the voter, you guys? How is the voter impacted by all this stuff, right? So first off, where do you get your voting information from? A lot of different places. I mean, TV is kind of the biggest one right now. All of the TV commercials, that kind of stuff happening that exists. We'll look at some examples of commercials in class here. People listen to radio yet. You'll hear radio ads. You'll see signs in people's front yard. The internet's a big deal now. Every candidate has their site. If you watch the debates, they said, go to tedcruz.com, go to donaldjtrump.com, that kind of stuff to, see their platform. Even the newspaper yet, there's always information on the newspaper, magazines like Time and Newsweek about that. Candidates do publish their own information. Also, the debates that are now being aired live on TV since 1960 that you can get information from candidates about so far. When you register, you have to register to vote. Essentially, it's making sure that you meet all the requirements of a voter, that you are a citizen of the United States and you live in the right location. Voting is broken up by districts and wards. You have to make sure you vote at the right place. Here in Sauk and Prairie, depends which village you live in. If you go outside of town, depends on which township you live in. If you live in a bigger city like Madison, it's going to depend on what ward you live in and what district where you go to vote. And there's actually a cool online site I can show you guys that will tell you guys where you got to vote at. They also make sure you don't vote twice. So you're going to sign your name on a paper that says I voted. That way that you can't go and vote twice. Here in Wisconsin now, you have to have your ID checked when you vote. You have to bring a photo ID to prove that you are you, and that way you're not voting for somebody else or somebody's not voting double in that election. The polling place has a couple of things to it. So usually ours are the village halls here in Sauk. It's a public building. I've seen before in schools. I've seen before in fire stations, even nursing homes, any kind of building that's accessible to the public. They're publicly announced. It's not like a secret where the polling places are, okay? And the main rule is that they have to be handicap accessible so that all people can get into the building and vote. There's a lot of different types of ballots that are out there. Most popular are paper ballots. You mark a vote on paper with a pen or you punch a little hole out, that kind of stuff you could do. That's what I see here. You have machines with levers. This is the voting machine I first used. You had to go in this little thing, the little curtain closed behind you, and you had to click the levers over who you wanted to vote for. And then when you open the curtain up, everything clicked back to erase your vote. Some places are using touch screens now as well. You can go to like a touch screen like you would at like a Walmart self-checkout line, and you touch who you want to vote. And also there's these things called absentee ballots. If you know you're going to be gone during election time, or maybe you go away to college, you still want to vote at your homes in your home city, you can ask. They can mail you a ballot. You mail it back by a certain time, and that's your vote there as well. So there's also we'll talk about some drawbacks and some good things with each of these methods. Counting the vote is interesting. Okay, they have to count the vote usually by a machine. It scans it. They will also check by hand if need be to make sure all the votes are right if it's really, really close. If they filled out, if the problem is that if a ballot's not filled out right, the computer just kicks it back out. And it's happened in Florida in 2000, the whole Al Gore, George W. Bush election where the ballots had a little punch card. You had to punch little holes out of the ballots, and some of the little punches didn't go all the way through. And they called it a pregnant Chad or a hanging Chad. With the computer, the ballots didn't run. They didn't record, and so they actually had to go back through like this and hand check every single ballot. Every single ballot had to be checked by 3 people to hand record the votes. So most time today you'll see it by computer. Like if you vote here in town, you will probably put it in a little scanner machine, almost like a Scantron almost. But that's how they do it here. But if they have to recheck the votes, it's a huge process. They have 3 people check every single vote. Now you kind of wonder, hey, if you have to check all these votes, how do we sometimes know the results hours before the election is done? They do what's called exit polls. So what they'll do is they will, certain people, as people are leaving, they will, ask them, how'd you vote? Well, you don't have to say anything. I mean, you don't have to answer. You can be like, hey, forget you, I'm leaving, okay? But if you say, I voted this way and why, they'll take the information down. They'll get a good sample size of American citizens. And you can talk to Ms. Ader about that in terms of statistics, what a good sample size looks like. And they'll figure out, hey, based off these sample sizes, based off these results, we can probably say this person won. And they'll do the official announcement later on when all the precincts and all the different polling places report. Typically, we go by popular vote, so more votes win. That's usually like here for governor and senator, representative, state elections. There are all kinds of elections as well. We'll talk about the Electoral College for president later on. It's a whole another bag of worms, okay? There are proposition votes out there. So propositions are when it'll kind of ask the people, hey, do you want this law in effect? So a very famous one was Prop 8 out in California, which was going to limit rights for same-sex marriage and homosexual couples. And it was a law saying, hey, do you want you to look at this law or not? So it's a proposition saying, hey, if we vote yes on this, legislature, you better look at this law. There's also referendum. We had that here in Sauk before we built the new elementary school, which was a law decided by the people. So the people in Sauk voted, yeah, we're willing to raise our taxes up to get a new elementary school. That's one thing they said they're okay with. There's also recall elections, too, which are to take a politician out of office, not officer, but office. Like this happened in California. The California economy had gone down, so they actually recalled Gray Davis, the current governor at that time, and then elected Arnold Schwarzenegger, the actor, famous in The Expendables, to be governor. He was governor of California for 8 years. We saw this with Scott Walker back in 2011, where he the recall election where he won and stayed in office. And so all the kind of elections that exist, guys. Here's a little overview. We're going to talk more in class about this. Thank you all for watching. Sorry it's a little long. Have a good day. Bye.